This tale comes from Emily, a 34-year-old nurse who thought she found her dream home until the man who rented it to her disappeared. Turn off the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin. In early 2023, Emily relocated to Portland, Oregon after a messy divorce. She needed a fresh start and a place to call her own. Scouring Craigslist, she stumbled upon a charming 2-story house listed for $800 a month, well below market value. The ad was sparse, with a single photo of the exterior and a phone number. The landlord, a man named Victor, met her at the property. He was tall, gaunt, with deep-set eyes and a nervous smile, but he seemed eager to rent. He handed her the keys after a quick tour, asking for cash up front and no lease, just a handshake deal. Red flags? Maybe, but Emily was desperate. The house was old, with creaking stairs and a musty smell, but it had potential. The first week was uneventful, though Emily noticed Victor never answered her calls about minor repairs. Then one night, she heard a thud from the attic. Grabbing a flashlight, she climbed up, finding an old trunk pushed against the wall. Inside were yellowed letters addressed to Victor, dated decades ago, and a photo of a family none of whom looked like him. The attic felt colder than it should, and she swore she saw a shadow move behind her. Shaken, she locked the trunk and left. The next day, Emily tried contacting Victor, again no response. She visited the address he'd given for emergencies, but it was an abandoned lot. Panic set in as she realized she'd paid cash to a ghost. That night, the power went out, and she heard footsteps descending the stairs. In the darkness, she saw a figure tall, gaunt, with those same deep-set eyes standing in her doorway. It didn't speak, just watched, then vanished as her phone light flickered on. Desperate, Emily contacted the previous tenant through a local Facebook group. The woman, Lisa, said she'd rented from Victor too, but he disappeared after her first month. She'd heard whispers and seen shadows, blaming an old legend about the house being cursed by its original owner, who vanished in the 1800s. Lisa warned Emily to leave, but before she could, the figure appeared again, this time holding a key, the same one Victor had given her. Emily fled to a hotel, but the next morning, the house was gone. Neighbors claimed it had been demolished years ago, yet Emily had photos and write receipts. Police found no record of Victor or the property, but a historian later told her the address matched an old estate where the owner vanished, leaving behind a cursed legacy. Emily still receives text messages from an unknown number with static-filled images of that figure watching her. Is Victor the original owner, trapped in some timeless loop? Or is something darker at play? Share your thoughts below, and if you've encountered a vanishing landlord, let us know. It could be our next tale. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more horror. Stay vigilant. You never know who's watching. I'm your host, JoJo Horror, where we dive into the darkest corners of real-life terror. And today, we're continuing our true Craigslist horror story series with Story 2, The Phantom Tenant. This is a story about a man named Daniel, who thought he'd found the perfect apartment deal until he realized he wasn't alone. Grab a blanket, lock your doors, and let's get started. It was late 2022 when Daniel, a 29-year-old graphic designer, moved to Seattle for a new job. Rent prices were sky high, so he turned to Craigslist, scrolling through listings until he found a sealed, fully furnished one-bedroom apartment for just $600 a month. The catch? It was in an older building, and the landlord, Mrs. Hargrove, insisted on a month-to-month lease with no background checks. Desperate, Daniel signed the papers and moved in that weekend. The apartment was quaint, with creaky floors and vintage wallpaper, but it felt off. The first night, Daniel heard footsteps pacing above him, even though he was on the top floor. He brushed it off as an echo from the building's age. But then, the next morning, he found a cold coffee mug on the kitchen counter, something he hadn't touched. He called Mrs. Hargrove, who laughed and said, "Oh, that must be from the last tenant." They left some things behind. Daniel didn't think much of it, figuring she meant forgotten items. Days turned into weeks, and the strange occurrences escalated. Doors would slam shut on their own, and he'd hear whispers late at night, like someone murmuring his name. One evening, while working late, Daniel's webcam glitched, showing a shadowy figure standing behind him, yet when he turned around, no one was there. Panicked, he reviewed the footage, but the figure was gone, replaced by static. Determined to get answers, Daniel confronted Mrs. Hargrove. She grew pale and admitted the apartment had a history. The previous tenant, a reclusive artist named Thomas, had vanished 6 months ago. His belongings were still inside because no one claimed them, and Mrs. Hargrove hadn't reported it, hoping to avoid trouble. She handed Daniel an old sketchbook she'd found, filled with drawings of a gaunt man with hollow eyes, eerily similar to the figure on his webcam. That night, the whispers grew louder, and Daniel saw the figure again standing in his living room. It didn't move, just stared, its eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Terrified, he packed a bag and fled to a friend's place, leaving everything behind. The next day, he returned with a locksmith to change the locks, but the apartment was empty. No furniture, no sketchbook, nothing. Mrs. Hargrove denied ever meeting him, claiming she'd never rented that unit. Weeks later, Daniel read a local news article about a missing person case reopened in Seattle. Thomas, the artist last seen in that very building. Police found no trace, but residents reported hearing footsteps and seeing a shadowy figure late at night. Daniel wonders if Thomas is still there, trapped, or if something worse took his place. And here's the chilling part: sometimes, late at night, he still hears those whispers, even miles away from that apartment. What do you think happened to Thomas? Leave your theories in the comments. And if you've had a creepy Craigslist experience, share it below. It might be our next story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more true horror. Until next time, stay safe, if you can. A young professional named Sarah moves to a new city for a job and needs a place to stay. She finds a great deal on Craigslist for a room in a shared house. The landlord, Mr. Johnson, seems friendly, and the house is in a good neighborhood, so she decides to take it. At first, everything seems normal, but soon Sarah starts noticing strange things. She hears faint whispering coming from the walls at night, and sometimes she sees shadows moving in the hallway when no one else is around. Mr. Johnson warns her not to go into the basement, saying it's off limits. One day, while Mr. Johnson is out, Sarah's curiosity gets the better of her, and she sneaks into the basement. What she finds is horrifying: an altar covered in strange symbols, candles, and what looks like bloodstains. Panicked, she runs back to her room and starts packing, but Mr. Johnson returns and catches her. He explains that he's part of a group that practices ancient rituals, and the house is a meeting place for their activities. He assures her that as long as she doesn't interfere, she's safe, but Sarah is terrified and decides to leave immediately. However, as she's trying to leave, she realizes the front door is locked from the outside, and Mr. Johnson has the only key. She's trapped. In a desperate attempt to escape, she breaks a window and climbs out, cutting herself in the process. She calls the police, but when they arrive, the house is empty, and there's no sign of the basement altar or Mr. Johnson. The police think she's making it up, but Sarah knows what she saw. Months later, Sarah hears about a series of missing persons in the area, and she wonders if they were connected to Mr. Johnson and his group. She never returns to the house, but the experience haunts her to this day.